Welcome to the Great New Me Reclaim Your Time series. This is a set of audio messages that help you eliminate time drains, which might slow your progress towards your goals and your vision, might slow those down. Before I dive in, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I ended up in coaching as a result of a series of life changes that led me to question what my purpose was. Prior to becoming a coach, I ran my own business as a consultant. I helped founders to scale their operations. I helped them raise finance. And even before that, I worked as a consultant for a couple of the largest consulting firms on the globe, helping multinational organizations manage growth and implement change. I believe in coaching because I believe we all have the right answers within us. It's just that the busy and extremely noisy world we operate in many times obscures our inner wisdom. So I use coaching to help people find that inner wisdom again. In this series on eliminating time drains, I look at how we can sometimes get in our way. I look at how we can recognize the underlying blockers and how we can resolve these simply and easily. The time drain I'm planning to talk about in this episode is called dissonance. Have you ever found yourself adding more things to your to-do list just so you don't have to face a particular task? Or have you found that thinking about that task gets you jumping up to do laundry or heading to the fridge for a snack? You might feel like the task just hangs around your to-do list, like a bit like a bad smell. It gives you a guilty feeling whenever it pops into your mind or when you see it on your list. But try as you might, actually getting it done proves nigh impossible. The typical response from most people is self-castigation. We tell ourselves off for not being disciplined enough, and we feel guilty about how long the task is taking. And to top it all, we look around us and we get bombarded by examples of people who are implementing exactly what it is we're struggling with, and they're killing it. And that makes us feel so much worse about our own supposed inadequacies. But the thing is, none of the self-castigation, the guilt, none of that makes the task happen any faster. None of that gives us any of the benefit that we thought we were going to get from finishing the task. So we wonder, is there a different way? I recall speaking with a young lady about her social enterprise. She wanted to establish it better. And in one of our early conversations, she talked about how she'd been advised by a mentor she respected, who told her that social media would be fundamental to her building her fan base and monetizing the work she was doing. She was keen to progress. She hadn't done much on social media up until that point. So she started out by setting herself some goals about how often she was going to post. And we talked about this. We talked about how she could perhaps keep it realistic. I encouraged her to start small so that she could, build the habit slowly without too much friction. And then I, settled down and looked out for her posts, but there wasn't much forthcoming. The next time we spoke, I asked her how she was getting on, and she admitted she was struggling. She felt torn. On the one hand, her respected mentor had suggested social media would work. But on the other hand, she really could not bring herself to do it. But what was worse was that the guilt and the stress she was piling on herself was starting to impact other aspects of her work. Basically, what this one aspect of promotion that wasn't working for her was now impacting the strategies that she'd used in the past and that had worked for her previously. So she was, essentially in a bit of a spin. And as we talked about how she felt about promoting her work on social media, it became clear that she had a real downer about anything to do with self-promotion, anything that even remotely felt like bragging. There's a whole other story about her reticence when it comes to putting herself out there that needed unpicking. But at this point, in the short term, it was obvious that she either needed to outsource the social media activity or accept that she was just not going to use it at all. What she couldn't continue to do was to let the angst and the guilt that was attached to worrying about her social media stop her from doing the things she was already good at. And I see similar patterns in many people. I had this middle-aged lady that really wanted to get more movement, but found herself unable to exercise at all because she'd been told weights are good for women of a certain age, and she just doesn't like weights. Or there was a charity worker that found that she wasn't able to implement her fundraising strategy because the message she was trying to get out there was to an audience that she no longer had any connection with. Sometimes I think what we do is we latch onto a task or a tool or an approach, and we give it too much headspace, we give it too much importance in the whole scheme of things. And we start to see that particular task or goal or approach as completely fundamental to our overall goals. And therefore, any inability to progress that with that particular task creates stress, and that stress ends up impacting everything else that we're trying to achieve. And motivation is impacted, the creativity disappears, and we end up losing confidence in our ability to follow through on things that we used to be able to do with our eyes closed. And my question, or what I'd like to help with, is to look at how we can get out of this unhelpful cycle. Look at how we can regain confidence and motivation, how we can invite back the creativity and the can-do attitude that we used to bring to the majority of our activities. And what I found is that the secret really is knowing when to let go. Sometimes it's actually wise to accept defeat with regards to a particular battle, because that frees up our energy and our attention to focus on tasks that we are good at, and it allows us to progress, and it brings back our motivation. The benefit of letting go of the task that's blocking us is that we are letting go of a demotivator. We're letting go of a stressor. We're letting go of self-doubt. And we're now in a position where we can see progress because we're doing things, we've got the energy again to do the things that we could do properly. We can see progress, we can rebuild our confidence, and we therefore have the motivation to do more. And the mindset moves from I can't, when we were stuck on that thing that we weren't doing properly, to I can. But how do we let go? How do we even recognize the need to let go? Recognizing that there's a blocker at play is the very first step that we need to take. And some of the things to look for include a sense of overwhelm, or perhaps reduced motivation, maybe despondency, and usually negativity. It might be necessary to rely on a trusted friend or partner or colleague to call out whether or not our attitude has changed. Because what I find in most people is that the ability to be objective about one's own behavior requires quite a high level of self-awareness, and that takes time to develop. But once the fact that we've been blocked is noticed and acknowledged and accepted, the next step, the second step, is to identify what is it, what's that particular task, activity, approach, what is it that's creating this angst that's putting us in a spin. And this should be relatively easy to do, because if you have a think about your tasks, your obligations, the things you should do that make you uncomfortable, you'll find that there's something there that you've tried to work on several times and you've seen little progress. But more importantly than the repeated failed attempts is the very strong emotion that comes up when you land on the right task. When you land on that task, you'll find that you get feelings of guilt or possibly shame, or even very, very strong anger that comes up when you bring the activity to mind. These strong feelings are a sign that dissonance is at play. Dissonance is that feeling of disagreeing with yourself. When you're trying to push on with something that part of you is in vehement disagreement with. It's like an internal battle. It's going on under the surface, but it's a battle nonetheless that's caused by this disagreement. And that battle is creating the stress, and that's draining your energy, blocking your creativity, and almost eliminating your motivation. The reasons for the disagreement probably should be explored and challenged, because in many cases, the reasons don't bear much scrutiny at all. But at this stage, given where you probably are being blocked and demotivated, at this stage, the goal is to help you move forward quickly. So I would say that we move on to the third step, which is letting go. Letting go can be done in many different ways, and the most appropriate way will depend to a large extent on whether the task is really as important as you currently believe it is to the achievement of your overall goals and objectives. Sometimes we've been led to believe a task is important to our goals, and we might have come to this conclusion because somebody we respect or trust told us that it's the right approach, or even because we see everybody else around us doing this, using this approach. But just because a particular approach works for one person, or possibly works for very many people, doesn't mean it works for everyone, and it certainly doesn't mean it's right for you specifically. Once my middle-aged lady stopped stressing about having to do weights, she engaged in dance, she engaged in yoga, and she's feeling much healthier and much more energetic than she had done in years. The lady that was fixated on getting social media right decided to outsource it. She's given the task to someone else to do. And now that that's happening without her, she's freed up that energy to work on the things that she actually enjoys. She's killing it. Letting go might mean having to be creative about how a task gets done, or realizing that that task is actually not as important as we imagined it was. But the benefit of letting go is that it gets rid of that battle that had been going on in our minds, that battle that had been draining energy and creating that demotivated feeling and getting rid of our creativity. So once you've managed to let go, there's a very important fourth step: celebrate. Our brains love the dopamine effect that we get from celebrating our achievements. So much so that we get motivated to repeat similar achievements in order to get a similar hit. So celebrating the fact that you're now progressing as a result of letting go will make it more likely that you repeat the steps when you face a similar situation in future. And you end up creating a virtuous cycle that allows you to quickly identify and let go of blockers as opposed to getting stuck. So I'll just recap on the steps. The first step is to recognize that there's a blocker at play. And you do this once you observe feelings of overwhelm or low motivation, or in some cases, you recognize a need to add lots more things to your to-do list in order to bury the thing that you don't want to touch. Also, like I said earlier, it might mean listening to the people around you that are telling you that your mood has changed. The second step is to identify the culprits. When you think about the task that's a culprit here, it will generate very strong negative feelings. Feelings like anger, shame, or guilt. You will always find that it's uncomfortable to even think about the task or activity. So once you notice those strong feelings, you have identified the correct task or activity. Third step is to let go. Just stop. Stop trying to do it. You can delegate it, you can outsource it, or you can just accept that it was just not for you. It never belonged on your list in the first place. And then the final step is to celebrate. Congratulate yourself for finding a way to move forwards. This is the trick to repeating the process. So where are you going to go from here? If you've heard any of my talks before, you know what I'm going to say. Just take action. Stop stewing in the guilt and the angst of trying to force yourself to follow through on an action that's blocking your progress and blocking your creativity. Follow the steps I've just talked through and let it go. I know I say this like it is waving a magic wand, but actually, once you have let go, the relief you feel certainly can feel magical. However, I know that there's some of you saying to yourselves, yeah, but she doesn't realize I really have to do this thing on my list of things to do. So to any of you listening and thinking that there's some sacred cows that really must be on your own personal to-do list, my response to you is please go find an objective person to talk to about your to-do list as soon as possible. Let them challenge you to be creative about letting go. I assure you, you are not as indispensable as you think. If you'd like to talk to me about your to-do list, you can make contact by emailing me on ola@greatnewme.com. I'll spell out my email for you. It's O for Oscar, L for Lima, A for Alpha, at G for Golf, R for Romeo, number 8, N for November, E for Echo, W for Whiskey, M for Mike, E for Echo.com. I really hope this has been a helpful listen for you. And as always, I congratulate you for investing in yourself. Keep exploring, keep taking action, and I wish you everything you wish yourself. Until next time, take good care. Thank you.